Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Britt. Hi Britt, how we doing?
How's it going?
Good. Um, I always find it weird saying hello after we've just spoke for like 10 minutes.
It's all right. You gotta do the countdown. You gotta do the formal way. You know what I mean?
Obviously, I know a little bit about yourself and sort of your experience, but if you talk a little bit about how you got into strength and conditioning, currently where you are with it all.
Yeah. So what I played basketball in college, and I had a bit of a career-ending injury. And I knew I wanted to stay in sports in some way, shape, or form. I just didn't know what it looked like. So for me, I started to kind of throw a bunch of just clay at the wall and saw what stick. And for me, it was strength and conditioning. I remember going in and doing kind of a little internship just on the dark side of things, which we call the consulting side. And it met that itch. And I looked for a lot of different things that never came close. I thought, oh, maybe I'll go be an agent. I graduated, and they were like, "Oh, you got to go to law school." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm out of here. I'm not doing that." And so I just kind of started trying to figure out how I could still stay within the sporting world. And the moment I walked in the door, I was like, "Yeah, this is it." And that was back in 2006. So ever since then, I've just kind of dug my feet in the sand and I've gone for it. So in any sort of way, I was in the dark side or the consulting side for quite a bit of time. And then I decided, hey, I want to see what it's like over in the uni side. So I got through 3 degrees of separation, like it always is for strength and conditioning. I knew somebody that knew somebody that did an internship or worked at UT. So I got my foot in the door there and asked. I met with Donnie Mabe for the first time and kind of begged and pleaded to do an internship there. I was already out of college, so it was a very untraditional type of internship, and he gave me a shot. So that was probably one of the best times in my life from an S&C standpoint. He kind of just took me under his wing and he showed me just everything. He set me up really for the coach that I feel like I am today. So I couldn't thank him enough for that. But from there, I went for it. He'll even say how impressed he was because I was like, "Oh, you want me to go to this conference? Sure, done. I'll do it." And I was not getting paid. So at the time, I was running my own business and I was just personal training and still doing some consulting stuff for the guy that I was working with at Helix Elite. So I was working 3 jobs essentially. One was a little paid. I was running my own business, doing just private personal training, making money. And then I'd bike down to UT, do an unpaid internship there, bike back up, train the rest of the day. And that's just kind of how it went for a little bit of time until I got an opportunity to go work at Purdue. And I went there and it was great opportunity. It was a grind. I made pennies. I think at one point I just had enough time, so I was like, hey, let's see how much money I would make. Because when I was in high school, I worked at Baskin Robbins. So I was like, if I spend the same amount of time or hours at Baskin Robbins making the amount of money I make, and I like took the time that I was working at Purdue and I like gave my Baskin Robbins salary, I was like, be making way more at Baskin Robbins right now. But I took it. It was a full-time opportunity. And for me, that was the way to get my foot in the door. And then it just kind of kept going. I got an opportunity at University of Houston. And every time it was just kind of a bump up, a bump up, a bump up. And I loved it. And that's where I met Jane. And Jane, for those who don't know Jane's basically the Nick Saban of diving. And her and I hit it off. We actually kind of knew each other through 3 degrees of separation because the diving world's a bit small, but also massive at the same time. And I just started working with their athletes, and I'm a very out of the box type of coach. So she really appreciated that, and she appreciated how much time I took on the sport. The sport to me always kind of, when I did work with it, just mesmerized me, just with their level of physicality, the things that they do. I don't think people really understand how insane diving is and their training and the intensity that they train at. So I really liked it. It challenged me and made me think about how this athlete needs to be extremely flexible. And, they also have to be probably one of the strongest people you'll ever meet. So at the time, back in the day, that was kind of like an anomaly of sorts. Or you had to be, strong like bull and not mobile at all. So times have changed, but that's the way we are. So from there, I was at U of H for a while, and she approached me. She said, "Hey, I think I'm about taking this job in the UK. Go train some athletes over there from the Olympic level. would you be interested in maybe helping us out from an S&C standpoint? Because I really like what you do with the athletes that we have here. And at that time, I was kind of thinking about maybe switching gears and going back into the private sector side anyways. So I was like, hey, timing's perfect on this. Let's do this. That was back in 2013. So now it's 2026, and this is my fourth Olympic cycle with Great Britain. So I've been with them for Rio, Tokyo, Paris, and now LA. It's been a 13-year ride, close to, yeah, almost, yeah. By the time we get to LA, I always like pop in I'm always there already. We're already at 2028 in my head, but yeah, no, it's been great. During that time, though, I've also still stayed in consulting. I've also gone back to the college world. I was director at a school here in Austin called St. Edward's Division II. I was trying to help them start a strength and conditioning program. They didn't have one at all, so I was building it out. It's a great learning experience. The politics of college is what I could do without, but that's for another time and another place. But yeah, and then I finally just decided, hey, I'm going to go back to consulting full time again. I really like it. I like the different variety that it gives me, the different variety of athlete it gives me. I know I said I coach outside the box. I also don't like being conformed into a box. I like to be able to go and do as I please. And I've been going around places here in the States, unis. I've been working with athletes here as well in the USA, going to different clubs and programs. And so just kind of extending that olive branch out, getting more people here in the States, but also just internationally as well. So I work with diving, I work with volleyball, I work with basketball, just all facets. It keeps me fresh. I like having that. There are pros and cons to being, this, being in a college system, being able to be updated on everything and kind of being in the know and being in that clan, so to say, of just up and ups. But there's something to me about the consulting side that I really just like. I like having just kind of my own path to follow, and I like where it goes, and I like being able to meet new people and see how people do things differently. I mean, I've gone to 3 or 4 different SEC schools, and they're all successful in their own right, but they all do things completely different. And I like that. I like seeing that. I like knowing what works, what doesn't work, how you can improve things, what meets the mark, and just kind of taking it all and making my own path with it. So that's a long-winded variation of where I am now. But yeah, it's kind of taken me all over the world and all over the US as well. So,
Yeah. So a lot of coaches, like usually at the end of the episode, a little background, apologize for just going off on tangents. Like, so I personally like it because, and I always explain it this way: one, we're getting to know you, the real you. Two, like you might go off on a long-winded run explaining something, but you might say the same thing a couple different times, like
yeah,
with
for sure.
parameters. But you're essentially giving like a different piece to the puzzle every single time. So like if it helps create a bigger and better picture of what you truly mean, I think that to me is worth it. So I never cut that out because I think it's important to get the whole picture of how you see it in your head, if that makes sense.
No, totally. That's usually how I see it all. It's kind of played out in my head, and it just kind of follows a little. That's usually how I program, really. So I have an end in mind that I want to get to, and I just kind of like I say, it's like a nice little play that I see unfold in my head. So yeah, I'm okay with that. Thanks for letting me roll on for a 20-minute long intro there.
With obviously having experience from both sides of the industry and sort of being taken all over the world and learning new things and processes, what's something that still fires you up about being in the industry and where it's kind of going? This is a quick shout out to our main sponsor on this channel, TeamBuilder. TeamBuilder is all-in-one platform that hosts programs, questionnaires, testing, anything that you may need for your athlete's performance, you can host it in TeamBuilder. TeamBuilder also now has 2 different sides, which is OS and Practice. For more information on TeamBuilder, check out the link in the description. And if you use code PACHOCKUP all together, you will get a 30-day free trial.
I like the way things have evolved. I know a lot of young coaches, it's hard to stay in this profession nowadays. Kind of it gets rid of a lot of you. It weeds them out much quicker, I think, than it has in the past. I like that they've kind of gone their own ways. It used to be very like one-sided. You were on the college side or you were either on the consulting side, and neither really kind of wanted to merge together. It was like one or the other. You can't switch sides, so you have to buy into one. So I like how there's been a lot of just kind of mixing now. You don't really see that rift or that kind of you have to pick. I see a lot of college coaches want to get consultants to come in from that side and pull their expertise and their knowledge. And I see a lot of college coaches, consultants going to college coaches and asking. So I think that to me, that's in some way, shape, or form happened. And I think a lot of times because of these young coaches that have kind of said, oh, I don't really want that grind over at college, so I'm going to go over here. And they kind of, they flip flop. It's kind of just made things more murky. So to me, that gets me excited because then that means that's only going to allow our profession to go up. But also the athletes to me, that's what gets me fired up. I mean, my dad told me the other day, which at first I kind of took offense to it. He was like, you're never going to get out of that job. He's like, you can't do that. And I was like, you don't know me. What do you mean? He's like, no, it's too much of an adrenaline rush for you. He was like, the highs that you get when you see your athletes succeed at the level they succeed at, he was like, it ignites something in you that's just like, it keeps you going for the next 4 years. He's like, you'll never get out of it. It's too much of an adrenaline rush for you. And you love seeing those athletes be successful. You love seeing them accomplish their goals. He goes, you won't be able to get a job and have that level of kind of just completion and being able to then start it up and do it again. So to me, that gets me fired up. That's what keeps me going, even whenever there's days where I just would like to close all my laptops, my iPads, all my stuff and disappear. Like that to me, after a few days, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get after it. Let's get going.
Yeah. So something you just said was really interesting. I kind of want to dive into it. So you said like, well, your dad was talking to you about it. It was summarized into each Olympic year is 4 years, and that's a cycle. And like once that cycle is done, you're kind of closing the book. I mean, I know some of your athletes, not personally, but obviously they're well known here.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Like I know how much they're achieving as well. So to end that chapter on that, and we were kind of talking about notebooks and notepads beforehand. Does it kind of just feel like anytime you think of it, you're just getting that notepad out and just like reading through it?
Yeah, there's a process though. Athletes talk about it a lot. I don't think anyone from like a coaching standpoint, and there maybe there has, but there's something called an Olympic low because you're at such a high. And those 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and usually we'll do a training camp beforehand. So you're looking at like a month. You're at like a level, adrenaline wise, that's just insane. But it's great. But when that ends, it slams like a book. I mean, it closes hard. You go back to reality and you've just accomplished, or maybe not accomplished, every cycle is different, all these goals, and you've been so excited, and now everything's just quiet and there's silence, and you go back home and you're like, man, wait, I got to go back to making my own food. I got to go back to, dealing with my children, which I love so much. But I mean, you get slammed back to reality so quick, and the dopamine drop is just insane. So once you get through that and you have a little bit of a break, usually we get maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, I go put those notepads up and I get a fresh one out and we start again. And there are times where I'll go back and I'll reference them and I'll look at them. And to me, they are like small snippets of time because I can remember the emotions I felt if I'm writing something down. I can remember how that was, just how to look at, like we said, there's something about putting, pen to paper. But to me, it also encompasses where I was at mentally, physically, what we were going through as a team or what might have been going through individually. And it helps me kind of just recall those things. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. That first year back in a 4-year cycle is to me like you're in like low gear and you're chugging, and then you start to pick up some steam. Those 4-year cycles they're to me now the way that I look at everything. Slow and steady wins the race, but they are a grind if you're not used to it. 4 years seems like an eternity, but in the grand scheme of things, there's small things each year that mean something that just stair step up to the bigger event. Yeah, it's tough. And then when you have a 5-year cycle, it really makes it really makes it different. Thanks, COVID. That was really fun. Yeah, I think to me, getting those 4 years is a blessing and a curse. When I would work in the college setting at the same time, I would tell athletes, I'm like, you guys get a year to redeem yourself. These athletes go and they might fall flat on their face. They have to wait 4 more years. So you have to understand they have to stay steady and they have to stay the course and they have to trust a process, not for 1 year, not for two, for four. Your whole entire college career for most of you is 4 years. So think about only getting one opportunity to be able to do that. And then you have to go another college career to be able to do it again. And it kind of just put a lot of stuff in perspective for them because they're like, oh, yeah, I don't think about that. You know, we do have world championships. Obviously, we do have Europeans, things like that. But the Olympics is the holy grail, right? So that's the main thing that we always strive for. That's what we're looking at whenever we're talking about goals and we're resetting for cycles. It's always going to be the Olympic cycle. It's not going to be, you know, a European cycle or a world championship cycle. It's going to be Olympics. So, yeah.
So you kind of mentioned like your progression through the industry with Donnie and sort of him taking out that space for you to learn and really drive you. What kind of lessons or what kind of sort of things prepared you for where you are now that early on?
Well, yeah, I'm going to get on a tangent maybe on this. There were a lot of things that I went through that I per se did not agree with or I didn't like, but I do feel like he helped kind of show me, hey, take both of those things because at some point you're going to get to a level where you're going to have to be in those higher positions. So you need to take what you like and you need to remember those things on how you want to train your athletes, how you want to lead, how you want to be successful, how you want to be viewed, how you view yourself as a coach and as a person, and take the things that you don't like and really know when you get in those opportunities to not do that because it's a lot easier to do those things than you think. You're young in this profession, so you don't know. So there are things that I really liked and valued when I was at Purdue, and there's things that almost got me out of the profession. And I took those things. And there's things that I loved at U of H. I loved how I was able to be my own person. I able to just kind of be off on my own and do my thing and not be harped and just looked at, from a lens that I really loved. And then I got to see a little bit more of the admin side of it and the politics of it. And I was like, ooh, so there's a lot of things that I got from it. The main thing that I took was to never just stay in one little tiny box. It was always to go and talk to other coaches, go see how other coaches do stuff, see what their styles are like, take what you like from their styles, and then somehow make it your own. You don't have to mimic anyone. I think in this profession, there's a lot of people who want to mimic. And I think there's so many great things that people bring into this profession. You don't have to follow 100% of what they do. Take what you like from it and make it your own because you're your own person, you're your own coach. We live in a world that's just instant access to everything, right? I mean, you can watch a few TikToks and then anyone can be a strength coach now. So it's just absorbing as much as you can possibly absorb. And for me, I really took to that because I went from a very unconventional route. I didn't go in and I didn't get in right at college and do the internship at college. I was already out. I was graduated. I had my own business. I delved a little bit in bodybuilding because I needed something to keep me going. So I had that reference. I had, the whole body awareness and the kinematics of things. But I took pieces of all of it because to me, that made it my own puzzle. And that's what I liked. I didn't want to only follow what one coach did because that was great or what that coach did. I wouldn't, so to say, drink the Kool-Aid. I was taking it from kind of everywhere. But I think to me, if I wouldn't have gotten that kind of viewpoint on how to look at things, it would have been very easy for me to fall into just like staying in that lane and going around the track over and over again. But to me, that's what's got me here. I like a lot of different styles. I think eccentrics are great. Overloading eccentrics are great. I think isometrics are phenomenal. I think overcoming isometrics are phenomenal. Eccentric war is great. Everything, French contrast, all of it's great for me, and there's all time and place for it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you one is the only outlier, and that might not be popular opinion, but I think everyone who has done their work in this profession and has paved their way for a reason, and that's why they've paved it. So I think we should be able to kind of throw the hat in and throw in a lot of different pieces to it.
And I also, so to piggyback on that, and I think as coaches, we're really good at like sticking to one thing.
Yeah.
Like if we really like a system, that's the system we'll ride or die for. And like the more I do this podcast and the more I look at my own training and what I do with athletes, like you can't die on hills because like every athlete's going to be different and not everything is going to apply to them. Like so I'm more of a multi-sport just now. So and I also run my own company, so I don't really have that choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is like I've now kind of went back on things and just changed the interpretation of it. Like let's look at so like say we're talking about triphasic. You've got the
hmm
three, the iso, eccentric, and concentric part. So like I was kind of looking at it. I was like, okay, how can I look at this differently? That example might not be easier, but the contrast example is
Yeah.
easier. So I'll look at contrast as well. So like contrast, you do something explosive, and then you do
Right.
something strength wise. So what else can we contrast? Like that's a question I have all the time. Like what else can I contrast? So I'll look at okay, like let's look at conditioning and energy systems. Can I send them on a long run and then make them do sprints? Now I'm thankful that my athletes and things they'll take bullets for me.
They'll
So
do it, right? Yeah, yeah. You got some guinea pigs.
like I've been very fortunate that athletes I have coached throughout my time, they've kind of just like, yeah, sick, let's do it, let's run it. One good thing about having athletics and track athletes, they'll just fucking do anything.
Yeah, yeah, they will. They'll just go. They'll be like, okay, yeah. What do you want me to do? I'll do it.
But no, it's like it's having that space to be like, okay, like what else can we do? Like let's experiment with it. And that's a really good point that you're bringing up. It's like, okay, what else can be done? Let me take
Yeah.
something from this end, look at this end, and just combine them. I think I had a conversation with Tim Schuschumel, and he, in his book, he has like this diagram where you're looking at all the methods that exist, and he's kind of ranking them on a bell curve on like
Ooh, I like that.
so like say triphasic isometrics are on one end, then like your French contrast is on the other end, and like everything in between is like a build up to the high explosivity
hmm
method. Like where does our athlete fit in first? Like what are they perhaps lacking? Like what buckets do they need filled? Where does
Yes.
that fit within this cowbell? And like how can we then develop them because like all athletes will have somewhere that they're perhaps weaker that needs developed. So like how can we introduce their strengths, still work on them, but like how do we bring their weaknesses up a little bit so like they're a more well-rounded athlete? And it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's
100%.
yeah,
I think, but to me, that's the only way I had to do that because I think there's two facets for me is getting into elite sport. You know, everybody's like, "Oh, elite sport's easy, Olympic sport's easy," and I'm like, "No, it's not. You're trying to get someone 1% better." My justification is I'm trying to wring out a very dried out towel. I'm trying to wring out enough water into a shot glass. So I have these athletes have been exposed to everything, and I have to make them 1% better to accomplish their tasks. That I had to start looking other routes, right? So I'm like, I can't just keep doing the same old thing. And that's kind of where it got for me when I first started because BBT based things were not really massive at the time. Technology has advanced in so many facets, and there wasn't a ton of info, all kinds of information. But I was like, I can't live and die off of percentages with these athletes. Like one day they're coming in and they can do 85%, but the next day they can't. They just their volume has shot up. They're chunking themselves off of 35 feet in the air, 10 meters high. You know, like we can't, or you know, they're pushing the narrative on what they can do on a 3 meter board. Their gas, their tax, their neurosystems not good, but we still have to keep moving because we have to do a 1% margin, right? So I had to start looking outside of the box. Also, in this profession, in the sport, especially with diving, I have athletes that are 13 to 30, and those 13, 14-year-olds are doing the same things those 30-year-olds are doing. So I have to take a very non-traditional approach from the start. So most of the stuff that I did, like you, I used guinea pigs. I used like some of my athletes here, I used some of my college kids. Sorry guys. I use those things, start throwing stuff out. I use myself as that. I started to get more heavy into the research side of it because we didn't have any of that. Sports science wasn't big then. love that it is now. And it was still that fractured industry of like you were good old boy system or you were in that new end technology stuff. And I was like, I like both. I'm going to watch the athlete warm up. I'm going to watch their body move in time and space. And that's going to give me the feedback of where they are now. But I need that feedback that software system is giving me. And that's when I started, just really like buying into it, learning, absorbing as much as I could, throwing things at the athlete to see how they would respond, both, from a nervous system standpoint, and then just see from all of those underpinning fibers how we could push them and get them that 1% better. That margin is so small, and those athletes have seen so much. I have to give them something that they can start to churn and grow and progress from. So, and you have those outliers. I would say this all the time. Like I couldn't use Tom as a good example because he genetic ceiling wise, he can absorb and do so much that I'd just be like, you're going to go over there and I'll keep those things in the chamber. You're an outlier that I can't really use realistic data on because I could push you way more. I mean, there'd be times where I was like, you weren't supposed to hit that. Well, we'll go where we can. That threshold's a little bit different for you. It was the same thing with me using those tangible feedbacks for squatting and quarter squats and 1.2 to 1.4, your body weight's going to increase your jump height. Well, there's athletes that we could even get up to like 1.6, but I would use VBT models and I would start to delve into the force production side of it, the rate of force side of it. I'd start to try to elicit more stimuluses from a 100 millisecond, from the 50 millisecond, and get that from like the feedback that I was getting from those VBTs. I mean, we got to really change that name because it's more than just velocity. I use VBT, but I use it more for power and I use it more for force output or rate of force development than I use it for just tracking their speeds. That to me is what I did, but I had to go outside that box and I just conformed to that. But that bell curve, right? Every athlete comes in and they're at a different level. They've been exposed to different stimuluses. They're weak in certain areas. They're proficient in others. So we want to build on that, but we also want to build up the other side of it too. Yeah, you have to meet them on that bell curve. And if you don't help them along that bell curve and get to the fun stuff at the end, to me, you're just kind of doing them a disservice. So yeah, I'm glad that it led me down that path because I look at things so much differently than probably the most traditional strength coaches. But no offense to those guys.
The thing I find interesting is like one, you kind of mentioned that this is kind of the dark side of strength and conditioning, the private
Yeah.
side. Um, but I don't think there's a steeper learning curve than being a private coach, where like you've just physically no idea one where your next paycheck is going to come from.
Yep.
Two, anyone can walk through the door. Three, you have to also have the ability to keep them there. And that's not necessarily being like, my thing's the only thing that works. You must do mine. But it's like, hey, how are you today? How's the
Yeah.
kids? How's sport? How's life? And like making sure that everything kind of all meshes together to get this one result. And like it can be hard because like obviously you don't have a guaranteed paycheck all the time. But it's also fun because like you have to be there's a certain element of creativity that you're like, okay, what else can I do? How else can I explore this method? How else can I, you know, teach this cue to someone? And like kids are the best because like there's such a blank canvas that you're like, how do I teach this?
Yeah. 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 And the way that they absorb things now is totally different than the kid like even 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it to me, I mean, the athletes I work with in the UK, they'll crack laughing, but I say this and I genuinely mean it. To me, they're family.
Mm.
We've been in the trenches. A lot of these athletes I've worked with, for the entirety of the time. So from 2013 to 2026, I've worked with them. Uh, I've seen them grow from young children to adults, and I've seen them have families. I've seen them go through, good, bad, and ugly, and in some degree, we've been through good, bad, and ugly, and they are family to me. I love to see them succeed outside of the sport. I think they're athletes, and that's great that they're athletes and that they have an identity as that. But for me, they're just like you and I. And seeing them succeed outside of the sport to me almost is I love that more because that means that we help them grow and succeed as a person. as well as an athlete. The athlete, that's secondary, but to see them grow and succeed outside of the sport for me is even better. I don't know. I think when you're in the consulting side, there's that level of just relaxation because you are able to, like you said, merge it all together. You are able to kind of know more about the family, get down to who they are, and really just kind of mesh with them on that personal level. Whereas you kind of have to be pretty. You can still do that in a college setting, but you have to be pretty, straight and narrow on it, just in case that people don't. You have a lot more people looking at you, and people might think other ways if you really kind of just gravitate towards athletes. Whereas in the consulting side, it's just, hey, it's me and you, and we're here to achieve your goals, and we're here to get better. And I'm here for you to hate me one day, but also really, really value me the next day. And then, I'm also here to be a sounding board too. I think, I say this a lot of times, especially in the consulting worlds, we're like the hairdressers of the sport world because we're that line of defense between the coach and the athlete. And a lot of times I feel like I play a very neutral role. I let the athlete feel like they have a safe space to come in and be who they are in the weight room. And you can ask a lot of the athletes that work with me. I'm probably a walking HR nightmare because I just give them all kinds of hell. I mean, I'm like, if I don't give you grief, then you need to be worried because I'm going to sit here and clown on you, 24/7. We're going to have a good time. I'm going to hold you to a standard, but we're going to have a really good time in here. And I'm going to probably, throw out some very un-PC things, but, we're all going to laugh and chuckle and leave. And you can, voice your opinions here and they're not going to get out. But it also helps me bridge that gap between the coach and the athlete. If there's frustrations from the athlete, I can hear that side, and then I'm also going to hear the coach's side. So I kind of take both, and I've used that to be a liaison between the two, to help athletes feel like they have a calm before the storm, to help coaches feel like they have that as well. And I think we are the hairdressers, right? We get all of it, right? So we have to know how to play both sides. We have to know how to kind of do what's best for the overall arching goal. And that, to me, gets really kind of like hit on more on the consulting side. And you don't know where your next paycheck is, but if you just morally are doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it and you're loving what you're doing, for me, it's always worked out where I didn't really have to worry about it. If I knew I was morally doing it for all the right reasons and I'm here and I want to be here and I'm having a good time, my paycheck comes. It's whenever I'm like, and I don't know what's happening. I'm like, oh shit, this athlete just left, or what's going to go here. And I'm trying to be like, hold my breath where things just kind of drop off. But I think over time you kind of start to know where those ebb and flows are, and, people come and go, and athletes always come back. There's so many athletes. I think people always are like, no, those are my athletes. I'm like, there's so many athletes in the world. It's all right. You can go over there and train with that person. That's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Thing is, if you do a good job and they genuinely like you, like it's an easier way for them to come back. Like I give a lot of my clients and athletes hell, and just it's those little banterous digs. So like on Monday, I had one of my clients in, and she was doing iso rows, and it was decently heavy, so she was started shaking. I was like, "Stay, stay," and I always have my dog with me, and she's like, "I'm not Reef." I was like, "Well, you are now."
Little did you know. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, no. I'll always be like, I'll watch something and so the athletes will be like, oh, when you go to squint and then you turn your head, we know like something's about to just come out. That's the in your mouth. And I'm like, usually it's like, I don't like that. Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, there, yeah, that's off. I don't like that. But I'm trying to figure out how I want to word it or say it. They always give the progression. It's like the eye squint and then the head tilt, and then they're like, and then it's about to be a bomb that's about to drop.
So
Yeah, no, it's nice though. They appreciate it. They know it's harmless.
yeah, so that's also a goal. It's like you need to let them know that what you're saying isn't to be taken harshly. It's like I just want what's best for you. Coach AK from LSU said it the best I've ever heard. And like sometimes she'll just see something and she doesn't know quite yet what's happened or what's wrong with it. So she like call me on my next set. Call me on your next set and I'll have a look. But that something's not right.
Yeah, yeah.
It just doesn't look right. And then they'll call her back and she'll be like, oh, it's this, this, and this. But like it's that thing where like I'm not quite sure yet, so do another set.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and rip that out one more time because that was yeah, there's a little bit more to it that I want to see. The picture hasn't been fully painted yet. Yeah.
100%. I kind of want to go back to something that, again, context is always important. So if you're not looking at context, I can sometimes sound like I'm contradicting myself. But again, context is important and it always depends on something. So I always say, like, so with this sports science and the data gathering and everything else, there's so many metrics to look at that people are getting stuck on that 0.001%. So for me, it's like become really good at learning, like at knowing and understanding two or three metrics and
Hmm.
building programs off that. Because like there's no point in taking 27 metrics if you don't know what half of them means. But then there's also the other side of like when you are in elite sports, that 0.001% does matter. But then it's like, but I'm taking all these metrics and only maybe one or two or three are making him or her that 1 point something percent better. How are you sort of looking at metrics, looking at their 0.01%? How's that all coming together?
Yeah, I think because I mean now we have so much. I mean, if you look at force deck information, which I think is phenomenal, there's so much. It's almost like a fire hydrant, just is like exploding with info. So for people to understand all those metrics means nothing, right? I think for me, when I first started looking at it and looking at just the velocity sequences of things, I start to see just trends. And I'm like, oh, this guy's got a longer torso or this guy's got longer femurs. And like that dictates where the pull is and this, that, and the other. And then I started using a device that I really use now. It's called a move factor. And it's really started to delve into both the eccentric and concentric side of things and give rate of force at 100 and 200 millisecond. It also gives force production at 100 millisecond, 200 millisecond. So it really got me looking at things because I would see athletes move the bar or move said object a certain level that would tick the box, so to say, but they would peter out into their sport. So they wouldn't be consistent over a prelim, semi, and a final. They burn out quick. So I'd go back and I'd be like, well, they hit the markers, right? And we're listening certain stimuluses. We're in strength phases. We're in this phase. We're in that phase, right? But when we get to the end, we're not building up, right? So it's really started to delve back to it. And I started looking at force production because that particular device really started to give me more feedback than I'd ever seen before. And I'd start to see where force production would be, let's say, if we're doing trap bar deadlift, and I could also see where their peak force production would be, and I could see where their 200 millisecond would be. So it would be living and dying off of just utilizing speed, and they wouldn't actually be putting force through the ground. So the force production would look a little bit low. So then I would go into this real big tangent, this wormhole of force production, and I would start throwing things, and I would use myself as guinea pigs, and I'd use, different athletes, and we'd start delving into listening, and trying to match that 100 millisecond force production to be bang on with peak force production of the entire rep. So we started to look more about intent and making sure that when we're pulling that bar, before you're even recognizing whether that weight's heavy or light, your force production is matching that peak force production from that entire rep, and really start building on that and building that foundation and kind of like just getting them to where we're moving that marker. And I love pure strength. I think there's a time and place for pure strength and you need it. However, when the bucket's full, like you said, right, and it's overflowing, how much are we taking from that
Yeah.
squat that you're getting? Are you able to load it and absorb it and transfer it back up? Or are you getting stuck at the bottom, right? Does it look like you're in quicksand a little bit? So I then start to get really heavy onto that side and really relying more about what that force production looks like. When are you eliciting that production? How quickly are you doing that? Are you giving me a 200 millisecond? Are we beyond it? Are you not matching it? And then try and find ways to get that out of that athlete, whether we're doing some sort of overcoming to where we're beefing that force production up. Am I giving you, an accommodating resistance to where you have to do that? Because if not, your ass is not getting back up off of that. Are we going from a deficit? Are we using it? What are we doing to kind of try to get that to happen? Because the other variable in the mix is that sometimes these athletes would be partnered up for synchro, so they have to match. So then you throw that other thing into the mix. So I really had to go and start looking at things, and really, like, to me it was like an onion. Is it multifaceted layers that I had to go into. So I would say for me, I take that force that VBT model, and I look at peak and I look at average velocity. I don't even look at average velocity if I'm looking for anything Olympic lifting wise. My athletes are not Olympic lifters, they're athletes. So the timing of the pull is going to dictate that speed of the bar. So I always look at peak velocity. I mean, people might disagree, but for me, that kind of helps me out. It's way better with arranging where we want those peak speeds to be from a barbell standpoint on an Olympic lift. And I look at average velocities for strength markers, but really I delve more into force production and how much force production delves into power production, because power production is what's going to make us look great, and how much can we absorb and transfer, right? If you're lowering, if I'm looking at our force plate data, which we get weekly, I want my athletes, especially those tower divers, to create force eccentrically as much as they possibly can. And when they are at, that zero velocity at the bottom of their squat, they have the same amount. And then when they concentrically come out of there, they have the same amount. I don't want anything lost from the moment they start their jump to the time that their feet leave the ground. Everything that they're generating, they're keeping, and they're absorbing, and they're transferring back up. Because when they go out there on that board, they have to have the same press over and over and over again, or that's going to dictate whether they're over or they're short. So for me, it was more about creating that. So my way of looking at all that data is I really carved it open and started looking at 100, 200, even 50 to certain degrees. What are we looking from a rate of force standpoint? How much are we absorbing and transferring, and when? And really kind of trying to get the athlete to create from the start and never lose any momentum or any force production until they're off the ground. So that's where data has gotten me. Yeah. But I think that's just being on the other side of it and not knowing it. I think now we have so many different ways, and we have so many different people teaching all kinds of the sports science stuff. It's almost system overload, and people are like, well, what do I look at? What do I look at? And I'm like, well, it depends on what you're trying to get with the athlete. I start to see a trend, and I like to look back each year and go, how can I be a better coach to my athletes? But how can I also just get this athlete who already is at an elite level even better, if that's possible, and where can we go, and if I can't do that and I don't do that, then again, we're not going to keep getting better and moving the mark higher and higher. Because what people don't realize is when you do move that marker, which I like to think that we have, everybody else is going to raise their level up too, right? And they're always going to try to catch you. So what's being done with a lot of these divers and the dives that they're getting off, it is insane. If you look at what Mexico is doing with the dives that they're putting together on 3 meter and 10 meters, crazy. What some of the girls have been doing over in Australia for a 1 meter springboard, nuts. The level has gone up because they know that they have to rise to the occasion. So you have to constantly keep rising with them, or they're going to catch up and beat you. And I don't like that. I don't like to get beat.
Something that I've been having a really fun talking about, and it kind of started with, again, I'm just name dropping, Brian Mann. Yeah. So we were talking about AI and VBT and how they can help each other. And again, I've always admitted this, I could have done a better job at recording that better, because so me and Brian have had this conversation previously. So we kind of just picked up where we left off, as opposed to explaining how we got there. But it's this process of okay, AI just now is growing, and you're able to get a lot more specific data based on what you're running. So, and again, it does take time to set up, which I understand, but the price you're paying you're getting a lot of return on that investment from it. So if we're taking your VBT or your platform or force plate data, mm-hmm. you input their profile, what kind of athlete they are, what's their specifics, what's their accolades, what's just any useful information that we would take into consideration, put that into your AI model, and then input their data from VBTs or force plates. Now, you can identify, what's the word I'm looking for? You can identify, I'm blanking on the word, but patterns. You can identify patterns.
Yeah, definitely. Patterns for where they are from, where they trend up or trend down, depending on what happens.
Comes up, you can be this is their data. That model can like start mapping out what they've looked like, what they've done, how it's sort of been, and then it can spit out like, okay, instead of 1 meter per second, this athlete really thrives off 1.1.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you can make that more specific to like different athletes. So, okay, I have one that's 1 all the way, have another one that's 1.1, have another one that's 0.9. So, like,
Yeah.
then we can make it a little bit more specific on like how can I best train this person to make sure that they're progressing evenly at the same time as everyone. Because it goes back to that example. Like, if the school homework is to climb a tree, but you're a goldfish, no fucking chance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like,
Good luck. Good luck.
so
Yeah.
it's the thing is like how can we now take all this data and make it more specific for the athlete? And I think if you program AI like in a very particular manner to help you with that, it can be a fucking great show.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's the whole send on sports technology in general. I think a lot of times when something new comes in, there is a bit of a hesitation depending on what it is, or there's like this for some reason everybody goes to it, and then everybody gets there and they're like, wait, why are we here? So there's one or the other with it. But to me, again, I look at it like how I said very early on with coaching, right? You can take what a coach does and you can take the parts that you do like out of it and you can create your own. And I take that with technology, just the way that it's advanced
Mm.
in the last 13 years for me has helped me as a coach get better. It's made me look in different facets and different ways at how I train certain athletes. And I like that. I took what I really wanted from sports technology and from data and from things like that. And I've used it to help me and to help the athletes that I work with out. But I still have a coaching eye. I
Mm.
still go in and I program. And there's a lot of things that I do that are completely buck ass backwards because that's what the athlete's showing me. So it's not, you start with this particular, exercise and then you go to this progression and this progression. I mean, I just had a conversation about this with the guy who works with me in the UK. And I'm like, hey, don't live and die by what the book says
Mhm.
because that's an athlete whose skeletal system's already fully grown. They have a training age that's relatively high. They've been exposed to things. That is a perfect scenario. I love books. I'm not knocking books, but this athlete is skeletal system still is not fully grown. They've not been exposed to X, Y, and Z. Put their ass under the bar and put them from a pin position and then let's see what happens. There's this athlete also, or this athlete does not like being in an eccentric phase at all. It's because they just don't know where their sticking point is. So they're probably still growing. So they have no awareness where they are in time and space because the time that they're spending eccentrically in that jump and the time that they're spending concentrically in that jump are fractionally, like they're different. It's
Mhm.
almost double, right? So put their ass in an eccentric phase a little bit longer. Put a tempo on them. Just do something. But you don't have to say, well, first I got to do this to this.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. What are you trying to get from that athlete right now? Where are they deficient? Again, what is that athlete deficient in? And where are their strengths? Well, we know their strengths are concentric right now because they're spending a little bit. They like hanging out down there. They don't like hanging out in an eccentric phase. So start throwing that their way and you can do it in different facets and you'll probably see things raise up because their body's going to absorb to it once they're able to settle a bit from a nervous system standpoint. So I think technology is always great, and I think the more that we have access to it, I just think we get so much thrown our way. People are just kind of like trying to like fight through it and figure out what's important and what's not. And I think for me, it's the athletes that you're training. So if I'm training with athletes where I'm seeing trends from whatever data that I'm getting, then I'm going to start peeling that back a bit more to see why those trends are happening and how we can, make them better or how we can bring them up. If they're deficient in certain areas, what are we doing? What are we doing in our training program that's making this trend be a little bit more exposed than normal? Or is this just the athlete? Okay, well, we maybe need to look at that and change the way we're doing stuff a little bit more. So it's also a check and balance too. It can be used as a pro for me. I don't see anything against it. People are like, well, "Are you think AI is ever going to take your job?" And I'm like, No. And they're like, what? They can rattle out programs. I'm like, yeah, but AI can't watch an athlete. AI's going to give you, yeah, there's no way. I was like, it's just same thing with coaching. You think AI is going to take out coaching? They're like, well, no. And I'm like, it's the same thing. So why don't we use it to our advantage instead of seeing it as a threat? There's a reason why it's being done across most workforces. So let's just kind of use it and figure out how we can make ourselves better, make the athlete better.
Yeah. You said something earlier that I love this discussion, and it's how strong is strong enough for their sport, and how do we measure that? And so, like, there's the whole 2.2 times their body weight or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. But like now with VBTs and stuff like that, we can actually get into a spot where like, okay, if they can like squat their body weight or a little bit over, sick. But like now, how
Right.
quick can you move your body?
Correct.
Because like if you've got your body weight on top of you, like how quick can we move this?
How much can you absorb and transfer? Like, and also transfer, right? Like I put body weight on my back, but can I transfer it back up? It might look ugly. Who knows?
So
Or you could transfer your body weight, but you do it slow as hell. So it's really not going to transfer to your sport. So, it really doesn't matter if you can move your body weight or not, if it's not correlating to what you need.
100%. So like my secondary question to that is like, how do you prepare them for the impact forces that they're having to do like pretty consistently?
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that nobody really gives enough time to is the fact that they're entering the water at the speed that they're entering, and they're entering on their hands. So in an overhead position. Everybody talks about the jumping aspect of diving, and that's great. I always say that's basically like the dessert of an 8 course meal, the jumping aspect of it. Everything leading up to that has to match or we're screwed. I do a ton of stuff. I love shoulder stability. I love working with all the mechanics of the shoulder. The back is my friend. I always say strong back save lives. So that's where we're at. Typically, you're going to see a ton of tricep injuries. When I first started working with a few of the athletes, I had a ton of tricep tears at both insertion points. And that's just because you're looking at where they're entering the water. And the small degree of variation off means you're getting a 10 or you're snapping, you know. And I started looking at things that to me that was an outcome, that wasn't the cause. So what are we doing? Where's their rate, their reach, their CET? How does that look? Where's their stability overhead? How are we able to stabilize and hit? Basically, you're hitting a flat surface, non-moving object. They're hitting. It's like a car running square full speed into a wall, right? And being able to absorb those forces over and over again, building that up, throwing a ton of different things their way from an upper body standpoint, stability wise, strength wise, and just really obliterating them. Not even obliterating their triceps. I mean, the first year or two that I worked with some of these athletes, we didn't even do one tricep geared exercise. We just worked on mid to lower trap strength, subscap strength, infraspinatus. We were trying to stabilize the shoulder in the best overhead way possible we could do to have them absorb those forces. Because we also knew the higher up they would get when they jumped meant the faster they would come down, right? So we had to beef up the upper body and the core as best as we possibly could to withstand the increase that we were getting from the jump height. So yeah, I'm all about the upper body. I'm all about mobility. I probably spend way too much time doing mobility based exercises that I find don't work, how we can try to get that CET range in a position that's favorable. We always measure an athlete's CET. We do it more in a diving specific way. One of our old physios, he's a beast. He came up with a way that we measure CET overhead range for divers, and we get that score and we kind of put them in a bit of a range to know whether they're in a safe space to go off of 10 meter and not get injured, or if they need to spend a little bit more time and get that overhead range into an acceptable spot. So, the thing with diving is there's not a lot of info on it. There's not a lot of data on it. A lot of the data came originally from gymnastics, and I think gymnastics is great. And yes, we have a gymnastic base, but it's going to look different than how we're entering the water. We're hitting the water. We're not on the floor or landing off of bars or balance beat. You know what I mean? It's different. I think the only thing is we do acrobatics. That's similar with gymnastics. And so yeah, so we've found those ranges. We've put ourselves and our athletes in ranges. So if the athlete falls below a certain CET when we monitor them, they're not safe to go up on 10. If an athlete falls below a certain CET when they're on 3 meter, we don't let them do optionals on 3 meter. They can do maybe some lineups and some lead ups, things like that. So we really try to put in a healthy upper body model to help keep them in check and to help them from getting injured. And that's just come from trial and error, to be quite honest with you. It's not like we've done something out of the norm. We've gone, hey, there's a problem here. An athlete gets injured. What is this athlete's, unfortunately, we would get their CET when they were injured or what happened. So we had to kind of really acknowledge the bad and figure out what's a below marker that we don't want an athlete to enter the water in, and what's an approving marker for us.
Just to be a little bit clearer, what do you mean by CET?
Yeah, that's that thoracic. The easiest way is your overhead range or your thoracic reach. So to not get super technical, so they'll lay prone on the ground and they'll lift their hands over their head, and we'll measure them from a wrist standpoint. But yeah, it's just your cervical and thoracic spine range. That's really the easiest way to put it. But we monitor that because that's how they're entering the water. So that's the best way we can do it. And that's where we found it's really helped the athletes kind of steer clear of injuries. I like to say it's kind of the same thing with like sprinting and running, and knowing markers for athletes with that as well. So
Yeah.
CET, cervical, thoracic, spine, upper back.
Bit of a different question. How are you coaching their faces for when they are spinning wildly in the air?
God.
This what Olympics was it? I think it was Tokyo. Like some of the pictures, like some of the stills that got taken while they're diving, it's
It's awesome.
insane.
It's awesome. It's like because it's the G forces. So the G forces are like, they're making them just crazy faced. Yeah, no, it's hysterical. I mean, there's between that and then a lot of them have like their athlete picture from when they were, like 10 or 12 that's still on their like credential. Mostly those faces and those kind of credential faces are what's their name when they pop up on my phone. So we use it.
I
We do
love
use
it.
it. Yeah.
I love it.
Or they turn into like stickers or gifts or something. Yeah, they definitely get used when they come out.
I love that. What's some advice that you would give new strength coaches or people wanting to come into this industry?
Good luck. No, no, I would say I say this all the time, but go and see as many different coaches as you can. Talk to as many people as you possibly can. I think they're in a great time period where coaches are far more open to sharing how they do things and how they go about coaching an athlete. Everybody's way more open and upfront. It used to be everybody kept everything. Nobody wanted to share their knowledge. So we're in a very sharing of knowledge space right now. So go out there and talk and see and learn from as many people as you possibly can. And network. We're all really cool people, and we all, to some degree, I like to say, like each other. It's just kind of ripping the skin off and going and introducing yourself and taking that facade off to where, it kind of melts that kind of forward facing look that might be intimidation, and give it a shot and learn how to coach on the floor. Please get out of a book. Books are great. I'm not knocking books. It probably sounds like I am. I really love books. I learned a lot from them, but the experience that you can get from just going on the floor and absorbing that and seeing how coaches coach is something that I think a lot of young young coaches are lacking. They have so much knowledge. They have more knowledge than us, but they lack how to coach on the floor, how to bring presence onto a floor, how to lock an athlete in, how to get an athlete to engage. I like to coach as I teach. That's what I say, because I'm coaching and I'm teaching, but I want to teach my athletes the why, and I want to teach them why we're doing this and why I need them to do this a certain way so we can get to the next little caveat into my play that I have written out in my head, right? So if you can't get those athletes to do what they need to do and execute it in a certain way, it doesn't matter how great you write a program. They can't execute it and they can't give you 110% and they can't buy into you, then it's not going to happen. I don't know who it was, so sorry, I'm not shouting out the right person, but I read a while ago that you can write the best program in the world, but if you don't have an athlete's buy-in and you can't tell an athlete why and you can't get them to work the way they need to, it doesn't matter. Or you could be a terrible coach as far as programming goes, but you could have 100% buy-in and someone will still get better. You know what I mean? So you could have all those tools in your toolbox. The one tool that you're lacking is coaching on the floor and commanding those athletes. So find as many opportunities as you can to be on the floor. And I think that's where internships, in my opinion, sometimes lack, because while we want them to learn and absorb, we don't put them on the floor in instances that teach them how to command the floor. We just have them watching. So for me, I like having young coaches who you can see, you can tell. I mean, you kind of know those coaches who really want to be there and who really want to do it, and throwing them, into the fish grease and saying, hey, you better learn how to fry here, because I want you to now take them through the warm up. You know the warm up, you watched the warm up for, 3 months now. So this should be a no-brainer for you. Run them through their first, block of exercises. Let's see how you command them. And then you'll really see the athlete, you can give them that tangible feedback that they know where they can get better on. But let those kids coach. You've got them in there, coach them. Especially if they've been doing it for a good chunk of time. Let them let them fly.
Few kind of points on that, and I love that you're kind of bringing this up. Internships now can be one of two things. It can be a really good internship, and we kind of know the universities that you do get a great experience with, or you can be a glorified cleaner. Where like,
Yep.
yeah, you're standing in front of a rack, but you're mopping and wiping down the rest of the time.
Yeah,
So it's like,
for sure.
by the time this comes out, this will already be out. But I spoke with Coach Mo, who's now in Coastal Carolina University, and he has this model, and it's like when he said it, like I was like, yes. And it's you watch, I do, you assist, you do, I assist, you do, I watch and evaluate. And it's like it's this beautiful progression of like, okay, watch what I do, and then by the end of it, you're like, okay, now I watch you and
Yeah,
evaluate how you're getting on. And like he was talking about, like this can apply for everything. Like anything that you can possibly teach, you can apply this.
that's true. That's great. That's a great model, I think. And you learn more by doing, right? So, and that allows that young coach to feel like they're valued and they're seen and they're learning while they're growing. You know, there's nothing more frightening than a young coach getting their first job and they're on the floor and they're just like deer in the
Right.
headlights, and in their head they have so many things like, well, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do that. And you're going, yeah, you can, but you have to simplify it first, break it down. So being able to do that in an internship program and being able to kind of work through those things and talk through those things with coaches who've already been there and they've done that, that's awesome. That they're going
Mm.
to be leaps and bounds ahead of those younger coaches because they've already gone through kind of that learning experience.
I
So
also,
no, yeah, kudos to Coastal Carolina on that.
yeah, I also think that program critiques are very important early on. Like you need to be demolished a couple times. Like you need to
100%.
like you need to be like
100%.
you need to be rung through.
Yeah, I think it's like, is it Mad Libs? Those old, I'm gonna date myself now, but Mad Libs, you go through and like you'd write out like you'd ad lib a thing where you just put a noun, an adjective, or verb. Like I feel like that needs to happen for programming with youngsters. Like you look at their program, you just put an adjective or a verb there where you think it's gonna go.
Like
But
I
yeah, I mean,
remember
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember some of mine and I was like, fuck, well I'll not be doing that again.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll look at it. I was like, sometimes you look back at it and you're going, what? What? Like I don't even, I'm like, where did I go with this? Like Jesus, I gave this to somebody. I mean, to a certain degree, you're like, oh, well, thank God. That means I'm learning, and I'm still learning even as I'm further and further into this process. Because if I look at something for forever again, I'm like, damn, that was good. I'm gonna get a little worried.
I've I've been kind of coming up with this model of like the learning process that we coaches go through. And like we always talk about like this toolbox, but we're just dumping tools in there. It's just one
Oh yeah.
flatbed of toolboxes and everything just goes in there. And again, in my organization brain is like, okay, but like let's structure this. I've came up with this method of like, let's think of this toolbox as a 4 tier toolbox, right? Your tier one is like you have all your main toolboxes. So like your normal day-to-day program, and this is like what you go to all the time. Your second one is like when your athletes don't quite need that thing, there's something else that you can sort of implement them. Again, going back to those models and the cow like the bell curve, it's like
Hmm.
what fits in there instead. So like now we're like fourth and third tier, and like we love coaching education, right? We'll go to conferences, we'll learn something, we'll speak to a coach, we'll learn something. So like okay, that goes in tier four. Like those are just things that I've learned. These are my new tools that I don't really know how to implement them yet. So then you've got your third tier, which is like your experimental tier. So like this is things that you try on yourself and you start tapping into that, drip feeding into your athletes. And then you've kind of got a choice. Okay, does this go into tier two, tier one, or does it go back to tier four? Like let's put that on hold for a little bit. And then it's like how like where do the tools fit in and like how can we experiment on ourselves and look at different concepts and interpretation of things and like where does that all fit within this grand scheme of things?
I'll give you one more on that one to throw into it. The tools that are already in there, are they a little bit rusty? They need to be dusted
Mm,
out a little bit.
yeah,
The more that we fit them into those categories, the more we forget about some of those old school ones that we've had that have worked. I would like to say I'm the most unorganized, organized person ever because like the way things have evolved and grown, I have like old note cards with like exercises on them. Now I've got, videos that I have of thumbnails of things, and I try to categorize them the best that I can. It gets a little bit chaotic and it's a bit unorthodox right now, but I still find myself going back to those note cards that I have from many moons ago of like just different mobility exercises, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that was a great exercise. Why did I forget about that? Because we have such a technology, or we just have everything that we can access now at our hands, that we kind of forget about some of those old things and we bring them back up. I think we kind of get bogged down in our brain with those things. So reevaluating and resetting, every few years of like, what's your coaching philosophy? What's your coaching style? I think those things change over time. My coaching philosophy hasn't necessarily changed. I would like to say it's evolved from where I was, when I first got into this process to where I am now and how I view things. My style has changed as well, but there are still things that I go back to that I find myself just like reigniting when I look back at those little old note cards and going, oh yeah, let's get back to simpler things and let's go there. And there's nothing wrong with where I've been, but sometimes those simple things do work depending on the athletes that I'm working with. So there's a reason why I do go back to those note cards, and I still get into my thumb drive and do those things too. But just revisiting old things and old hacks and styles of doing stuff, and just kind of re-simplifying stuff just depending on where you are. To me, I think young athletes, they really help me with that, because if I have a different new athlete coming in that doesn't have a pretty good training age, I really have to simplify things. So I get back to bare bones and I dig those old tools out and kind of shake the rust off of them and get back to simplifying things. And then I have those new fun shiny ones that are up there. Yeah, I think all those things need to get used, and there's a time and a place for all those, and it's athlete to athlete dependent. That's the great thing about consulting, is you're going to have a lot of different levels of athletes that come in. You see that in the college world, but it's pretty cyclical, right? You know where you're at with the freshman, with the sophomore. I know the transfer portal's kind of
yeah,
thrown a lot into the mix, because you're going to get a lot of different types of athletes, and athletes that maybe have been in a lot of different systems, because maybe this is their third school, or maybe they're an old athlete and they're a graduate, a fifth year graduate, and they've got a lot of old injuries. It's turned that variable in for college, but I think you kind of cyclically know what you're getting into with athletes, with where they're coming in and what you need to work on. So consulting kind of changes that mix up sometimes.
100%. One tool that I love, I wish I spoke more about it. Voodoo flossing.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah, I
So
like
like,
that. Let's go there. Yeah, that doesn't get enough cred these days. Yeah.
so it's one that like not a lot of coaches speak about, but like the
Yeah.
coaches who know.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, all right, we haven't done that in a while, but let's do it. You pulled out an index card on that one.
So like, it does come from a little bit more of a meathead way of doing things.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
But like one, it feels great afterwards, and like it's so good.
It's awesome. I mean, if the to me, I always say the only way, like they're Meathead's best advertisement because those guys would be like damn near in tears, but then like the result afterwards would be so brilliant. You're like these ginormous individuals are crumbling, but then it's that instant like I feel like a brand new person when you walk off. You're like, why would you not want to try it?
Mm.
I mean, to break down that from the that type of specimen, just think what's going to do to the non-meathead. I don't know. To me, that was my immediate when I saw it many moons ago. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta go try that.
Britt, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us today.
Yeah, it's
If
been
you
great.
can sort of let people know where they can reach you and ask more questions.
Yeah, for sure. I need to do better at this. I say it all the time, but I'm on Instagram. Trade for Success. Yeah, look at that. That plug's on there. You're on it, man. Reach out. I will get back to you for sure. All my info is on there as well. If you want to email, I will check my email. I'm always better via phone, but hey, that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. I like chatting with anyone and everyone, young, old, new coach, athlete. Just give me a shout. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Hopefully, I'll see you next time I'm over. We'll have to get together.